Luke, Tom Levecchia here with the latest edition of the New Theory podcast. We're going live on both Zoom as well as YouTube with John Pennisi, who's joining us, who is a former MAID member of the Casey crime family. And this is part part nine, of a series with John, who is an important defector of La Cosa Nostra in New York City. And we have received great results in terms of our lives, our broadcast. And we figure we try something different, do something live. And John, before we start, we do have a sponsor, which makes this possible. And the cool thing about it is one of the themes of what we talk about with John is legitimacy. And I'm sure in the social media world, there are a ton of influencers, ton of gurus, people that say they do all these things. And it turns out a lot of them are full of crap. You pay them their money and they disappear. So I'm here as our sponsor. Mentor Course Review is an online platform where you can review online gurus and check out real influencers, real people reviews, and find out, more importantly, who's giving real results. If you want to find a mentor, which we all need in life, and you want to find out who actually is a legitimate mentor, check out mentorcoursereviews.com. I'll put a link below. And then Mr. Adam, who runs the site, tell him New Theory sent you. So John, with further ado, we're in our 9th installation. Welcome back to the New Theory podcast. How you doing today?
Doing well, Tom.
Okay, so we're going to balance the Zoom feed along with the live on YouTube, but we promised we would start off with some questions. So you ready to go, John?
Yep.
All right. Now this comes from a guy that calls me Tommy Vex. So I guess I got my first mob nickname.
You got a nickname.
Exactly. So kind of cool. So he has a few questions for you, and this guy seems like a little bit in the know. So first question is, when John was straightened out, when you were straightened out, did you know the exact number of members in the Borgata?
I did not.
Okay. Did you have a clue of how many maybe units or crews?
At that time, no.
Okay, so something you learned later on.
Yep.
Okay. One thing I do have, and this is a question that I have, is I was reading that historically the Lucchese's had 3 crews in Brooklyn. I think it was Gravens, Bensonhurst, and one other one. But now it's actually 1 crew, and it's mostly Staten Island. Would you say that's fair?
Well, yeah, it was the Brooklyn faction was out of Staten Island when I was around.
Okay.
We were going to bring back the original Brooklyn faction. I don't know if that ever took place because that, I wasn't around after that, but there was discussion about putting together another crew for Brooklyn, in Brooklyn.
Got it. Now, John and I talked a little bit about this offline. The way it's run is like a company, and there's a structure. That's why it's organized crime. And one of the things that it's modeled after is actually the Roman Empire. And with the Roman Empire, when you say Capo regime, you also say Capo Decima, which is captain of 10 people. So, John, what happens if you're a captain and you actually have some new inductees and you're managing or leading, to use those words, 10, 12, 13 guys? Do they ever splinter off and create a new crew because maybe one guy has too many guys under them? Or how is a captain set up, and how many guys do they typically have under them?
Well, a captain is, first of all, captain's placed in the position, and he could have a lot more than 10 guys. I believe that Dom Trasulo's crew, which was the Manhattan crew, had some at one time. Dom himself had told me he had 30 something guys. So that's not, he didn't at the time that he told me, but he said at one time he had over 30 guys. So it doesn't really it doesn't matter how many or how little you have. Sometimes they could have a captain with no guys.
Oh, wow.
And the reason being is if they want to bump somebody up and put him in a position, he cannot go from soldier to, let's just say, underboss. He would have to go from soldier to captain to underboss. So they would make him a captain with no men. That's how they would phrase it. And Matty Madonna was one of those guys. He was a captain with no men.
Interesting. Okay, so it's not okay.
Before,
It's a hard and fast structure.
he was a captain with no men before he became acting boss.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So next question that GR had was, when you were Shylocking money, what kind of loans did you offer? Knockdown loans, juice loans, and how many points did he lend for? I can't know.
I mean, look, a knockdown loan, no one offers a knockdown loan. A knockdown loan usually comes for two reasons. One, when a guy just can't pay anymore and is running into trouble, or maybe somebody comes and speaks for that guy and says, can you do me a favor? Can you do a knockdown? And that means that the VIG becomes off the interest. The VIG comes off of the interest, whereas before the VIG has nothing to do with the not the interest, I'm sorry, the principal. The VIG does not come off the principal, right? No matter how much VIG you collect, the principal stays the same. But on a knockdown, the VIG now comes off of the principal and knocks down the principal. But no, that knockdowns were never offered, and it varied. It depended upon who was being lent the money, and how much it was for, and whether it was for 3 points. I was always told to stay in that range or below it, where you don't hurt a guy. There was some people, they'll charge you 4 or 5 points.
Interesting.
But yeah.
Interesting. And obviously that was one of your main money makers. Okay, we're going to flip the script a little bit. So we're working on Zoom. So I'm going to share the screen, and John's looking at it from his screen.
Okay.
And this is as real as it gets, guys. He's going to give us the breakdown of the La Cosa Nostra chart for 2018, right after he defected. And obviously, John, we're going to deep dive in a second, but what's your first reaction to this chart?
The chart's wrong.
Oh.
Yep. The chart's wrong. This may say 2018, but this is wrong.
How so?
Well, there's certain, I could tell you right now. First of all, on the top of the chart is Vic, so that's correct. And the whole bottom of Vic is the administration. Administration on this chart of 2018 is wrong. These guys were all, with the exception when I was around of Stevie, definitely, he might have been away in 2018, but Stevie was the only guy that was still part of the administration when I was around. Matty and Giordanopoly were incarcerated, and their positions were filled, because now the acting boss was Mikey DeSantis, and there was no at that point there was no consigliere. So and then on the bottom here, going into the Jersey faction, you had Ralphie Perna was no longer a captain. He was knocked down to a soldier. And going across, you had Little Joey wasn't a captain. He was in our crew. Little Joey was a soldier in our crew. And next to Joey is Tino. Tino was acting for Dom. And I don't see Dom on this chart. I don't even see.
Dom,
Yeah, I don't see Dom.
Interesting.
Well, because they have Carmine as Manhattan and Long Island. That's the Dom was Manhattan.
Interesting.
And then also down on the bottom where it says Jersey Bronx faction, um, the Joe Perna was with us in Staten Island. That was the Brooklyn faction.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And then John, and then Nicky Jr. was with you guys too? No. With your crew?
Yes, but he wasn't. He was already incarcerated when I was around.
Interesting. So I'm just looking at this list, and this is from 18, and you're not even on it. Like generally, even if somebody defects, if they're recent, like this is not a perfect science, obviously, but they're on it. I don't even see you on it. So
Well, take a look at who got straightened out with me, Anthony Guzzo, right?
yeah,
Where do you see his name on this list?
he's not on here.
He's not on there. And let me look for Patty. And Patty was with us that day. I forget Patty's last name, but Patty's not on this list either.
Interesting. So just like any other intelligence gathering, obviously, there's probably informants and that kind
Also,
yeah.
go ahead. On the very bottom of the list, in the picture section, he's under Joe Caridi. Anthony Grado is shelved. He wouldn't be on this list.
Interesting. Why did he get shelved?
He got shelved for drug using and drug selling.
Interesting. So what I wanted to get at is this is wildly inaccurate, which I'm shocked that this day and age with informants, government surveillance, that kind of stuff, right? So my question to you is, did your crew or do they ever give disinformation to like the feds? Do they give disinformation to throw people off? Maybe when new guys are made, like I just want to understand why there's such a major disconnect on this in like 2020 or 21 rather, when I'm just shocked that it's that wrong. It kind of implies that your Borgata may be a little stronger and a little bit more clandestine than we think. What are your thoughts on that, John?
I just think that the list is an older list. It's definitely it's not accurate. It's inaccurate, and don't forget they without anyone cooperating, this list is made up basically, from what they hear and what they gather, and they meaning the government, excuse me, and what they're told, and they piece together this, some kind of a chart. I mean, it's, they have basically a lot of guys here, but it's definitely not an accurate list. It's definitely not a 2018 list.
Interesting. Now, of this chart, who were the up and comers and rising stars? I know you were kind of pegged for that, but you've since moved on. Who would you kind of as a rising star in this group?
Well, I got Andrew DeSimone was spoken about highly. He later, I believe, took a consigliere position. I don't know if that's today that's accurate. I'm trying to just look at everybody. Well, here, look, this is another. I see something else. You got Georgie Neck. They have him as a soldier in the Brooklyn crew, and that's not accurate.
He's a captain?
Yeah, he was. I don't know what he is now, but I think they had a position for him. I don't know if he got it, but I don't really see, I don't really see anybody that was, up and coming.
Interesting. And you mentioned Mike DeSantis. They have him as a soldier.
Correct.
And that's only 2 years ago. So these charts.
And they also got Patty down as a soldier.
Interesting. Now, do you think now, is there anybody on here that's not straightened out? Like, could they mistakenly think somebody got made? Is that possible?
Um, all the pitches are accurate. Um, and the names look pretty accurate from what I'm looking at.
Interesting.
I don't, I mean, that doesn't mean there isn't somebody on here, but I'm pretty sure that, everybody's on here is a friend.
Interesting. So as far as your knowledge, and again, this is just guessing because you said it earlier, you didn't know, but you're guessing roughly 90 to 100 men on this chart, according to, I guess it was a Black Hand Forum, and thanks for putting it together and sending this in. My question to you is, does 100 sound about right?
No, I believe it's more.
Interesting. Interesting. So is it fair to say that your old Borgata is it more powerful than we think, or is it just has more numbers, but not necessarily more powerful? That's what I would like to understand, John.
Well, in that life, strength comes in numbers. So, the more the more guys you have, the more powerful you are. We were always told never to discuss who our captains are to other families because we didn't want them to know how many crews we had. And we start discussing, oh well, he's a captain, he's a captain. You start telling another brigada kind of your strength and how many crews you got. They could go by how many captains you are, and figure out how many crews you have.
Interesting. Now, to run an organization, there needs to be organization. How does so the boss is in prison, there's a street administration, that's pretty straightforward. Just judging by this, John, there's roughly 10 or so captains. How do the captains communicate with their superiors, and how do they communicate with each other?
Well, they see. Well, back then we had the club up in the Bronx, and they would communicate that way or communicate at a wake. Unfortunately, those were gathering places. Um, or if they had to meet them, they would meet with them, and together, captains could meet and talk. They would meet. Two captains had to talk about something. They would meet, or three. You know, there was always a way of communicating and meeting.
Interesting. And let's say there's a policy change, right? So you have somebody at the head who makes some sort of policy change. It has to reach 100 some odd men. It's not you can't send an email. Was there a certain, like, I know like in the Sicilian mob, they'll do like notes and code and that kind of stuff without getting too, conspiracy theory, but like, how, 100 people got to know something pretty quick that affects.
It always would go to anything that needed to be passed along would go through the captains. And then each captain is responsible to tell his crew. And that would be the way. There was no notes or, nothing like that. But the captain would tell his crew whatever it is that he was told, even if it was like, we got to come up with money for, like, for instance, you heard me talk about we came up with money one time for Vic's appeal, and then Vic needed some housework done on his house or something, and we came up with money that was all passed down from the administration to your captain to the crew.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to one of our old videos where we had a ton of questions. This is the Christmas episode. Let me just see. Very interesting. You kind of talked about this on a previous podcast, but I want to go deeper with it. So Stefan says, the West Side was super secretive, super successful. They're the Ivy League. Why do you think all the other families? Why didn't they, I know, like they're like you said, they're from outer space, right?
Yes.
That's getting too weird. Why didn't just everybody emulate them and strengthen their teams?
I mean, like I think I've mentioned, I think that the Sicilian faction of the Gambinos did do that in a way, and I don't believe that they were necessarily emulating the West Side. They could be bringing old country values into, their life here. But I don't really know the answer. I mean, it's as much as we joked around and knocked them, and called them from outer space and whatnot. You can't, you got to give them credit because they kind of knew what they were doing and they were very cautious. Why everyone didn't kind of go by, take their lead, or emulate them, I don't know. I mean, it probably would have been a good idea.
Interesting. So, all right, there's a lot about the Jersey Crew, guys. We're getting a lot of questions. John and I are going to expand our offering. Stay tuned for that. So we can't answer all the Jersey questions. I'm a Jersey guy. I would love for him to answer the questions. But I guess one of the big questions is, kind of like the split in Jersey. Why did Perna get roughed up? Why did he go to Staten Island? And then how did kind of the Jersey Crew land with like Nicky Scarfo and some other guys? If you could just maybe top line. I know
So Perna gets roughed up by his cousins, but Perna at that time was not even a friend. So this is a long time ago. That had nothing to do with why he came to the Staten Island. From what I heard was that there was some inter-family fighting between their cousins and the Pernas, and exactly what happened, I don't know, because you don't really X. And so I think I mentioned that first we got Ralphie and Johnny Perna, and then when they went back and they were sent back to Jersey, then we got Joey, the other son. So it was something was going on. There was a lot of arguing. There was a lot of Joe Perna didn't speak so highly of his father and brother, and I spoke highly to him of the father, and there seemed to be some, how that goes. That happens in normal families. The father, the son, they're arguing. So that's what was happening there. What else did you say? You said something about Nicky Scarfo.
Yeah, Nicky Scarfo Jr. What happened to him?
Nicky Scarfo Jr. was the reason why he was even inducted in the family is because they tried to kill him. So Vic was away with his father, and to protect the kid, they straightened him out. And when I came into the family, he was already gone, and already he got himself in trouble. But that he was part of the Brooklyn faction at one time.
Got it.
And I'm sorry, he was part of the Jersey Crew, and then he was Capo regime of that crew. And then he was taken down, and I believe he was put with the Brooklyn Crew, but I could be wrong about that. But I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Got it. So this is a question that seems to get asked and pretty often is what was your interaction with non-Italian associates, biker gangs, street gangs, Bloods? Maybe not yourself, but Lucchese's had an indictment a little while back and seemed to have like kind of Bloods either on the payroll or kind of working with them. What's your thoughts, and who did you first? Let's look at you, John Pennisi. Who did you first interact with, maybe non-Italian gangs, and then who, in your opinion, did Lucchese's mess with as a Borgata?
For myself, I did not interact with anybody outside of her life. The Jersey Crew, particularly Perna, they had a connection with the Bloods, and they interacted with them. I don't believe that we interacted with any like the Albanians. We didn't have any. I think the Gambinos more interacted with Albanians from the Bronx.
Yeah.
Not that I know of that all Bagata did. Um, Aside from the Bloods, I couldn't tell you if we did have any interaction with anybody else. I don't believe we did.
Okay. So one about the Angelo Ruggiero. So they said Sal, his brother, wasn't made and was getting his stuff, his junk from the Sicilians.
Yeah.
Uh, how did that kind of blow back on Gotti and his crew? I know you kind of touched on it that there was, that's probably
Well,
why Paul got killed, but
aside from them making a lot of money,
yeah,
the blowback was that it it actually triggered the events that led to them hitting Paul, was because they were exposed, because Angelo and Johnny Koenig and Jeannie, they caught a case.
yeah,
And that's the whole thing with the transcripts, and Paul wanted the transcripts, and that really was the blowback. The blowback was their lives were on the line, and Paul was a guy that was known to definitely take you out if he thought that you were dealing drugs and going against the Bogata's rules.
interesting. Now, I probably know the answer to this, but what did you read Al Diorco's book, and what do you think of what is your opinion of the kind of current Lucchese family Borgata? But first, did you get a chance to read Al Diorco's book?
I did.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Didn't
Yep.
or did?
Say that again.
Wait, you did the ID or didn't?
I did. I read the book.
Oh, I'm surprised. I thought you didn't read it. Oh,
Yeah,
talk to me then. What do you
I
think?
did. Um, I think that he was excuse me. I think he was pretty accurate. You know, from what I heard about him, I I don't I don't believe that he was a liar, and I'll tell you why. He was a very, very hard witness for defense attorneys, and the reason being is that he just told it like it was. Like, he didn't lie. He didn't hold. When he did something and they questioned him, his answer was yes. He did do it. And when you're telling the truth and you're explaining what happened and you're not embellishing or adding or taking away, and you're just saying it the way it is, you become a very, very damaging witness. And that's what Al was. So I believe that, why would he lie in his book? The only thing I ever heard mentioned in his book was that there was a section in the book when he talks about a guy named Tommy Red, and he that went on a hit with Patty Delarosa, and he kind of badmouths Tommy Red and says that he kind of you know didn't do what he needed to do on that hit, and Patty had told me himself that that wasn't true. So you know that Al was making that part up or embellished on that wasn't true. So I mean, with the exception of that one thing, and I don't know, it could have, did he have an issue with Tommy Red? Maybe somebody told him this. I don't know. I don't know what the story was, but aside from that, I think that he told his story, and I believe they definitely were going to kill him. And I've had heard that if he didn't get out of that um, hotel that day, that he would have been gone. So you know, he definitely caught. People may say a delusion. They like to say delusions, but I believe that he was paranoid. They like to use that word. That paranoia saved his life that day.
Interesting. So this is obviously an opinion question.
Okay.
Most of these are opinion, but some are facts. If Big Paul promotes Gotti Senior to underboss when Neil dies, does he still kill Big Paul?
I mean, you got to remember now he's in a different position.
Yeah.
It may. I had heard things, or rather read things. I didn't hear it, where they're saying that was a possibility that he was in line. I don't believe that. I don't believe that that was so. But if that was the case, it would definitely change the outcome of events, I believe, because don't forget the underboss is just like a right hand man to the boss. I mean, he has just as much say and as much power as the boss. It probably would have changed what took place. I believe that maybe, you know, it would have definitely changed the history there.
Interesting. Okay. So this is something you and I kind of chatted about offline. So it says everyone thinks about the hit for the Castellano hit. Sorry, everybody thinks that Borriello was hit retribution for Castellano, but that's not true. Chin and Gotti sort of hashed out the Castellano hit and moved on after the Chico car bomb, which caused a lot of media attention to put spotlight on both families. Second, the hits on Lino Biorello, done by the Lucchese family, primarily gas pipe, because of their botch hit that Andrew Ruggiero puts on gas pipe, sanctioned under gas pipe, was a maniac. It was nothing happened, so he went nuts and just kind of did it.
Yeah.
So this is kind of what you said, right? So you were saying that basically gas pipe hit back the Gambinos on his botch hit on him. It wasn't.
I don't believe that. I think Eddie Lino you know, he was close to Johnny Gotti. I think that that was a personal hit, you know, towards what took place. Um, I had heard different versions of what's his name, Bobby Burriello. I heard different versions of what took place. Um, I don't. I'm not really even sure. I thought it was part of it, but I think there might have been some personal. Something happened and it was something personal, and maybe they just acted upon it, and you know, it looked like it was part of that. But I think Lino was part of the revenge. You know, for what took place with Paul. But Guess definitely did some retaliating over the Angelo. Why he never tried to hit Angelo, I don't know. It's kind of strange.
Interesting. So we're gonna wrap it up, but there's a few more questions before we wrap up. What how does that, tough question to ask because you're my friend, but how would you treat yourself? So you're still in the life, good friend of your defects, doesn't really have anything on you, so he doesn't roll on you. But he's on a podcast talking to some dude from Jersey who's relatively unknown or completely unknown, and just sharing a lot of information, some of which includes yourself. Do you let it go? Do you retaliate? What would how would you handle yourself?
Well, first of all, how I would have never, I would have never let anyone in the Bagada falsely accuse anybody. That would have been number one. Um, with that being said, I would have, if 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 what took place was the exact same thing which happened to me, and I found out that people in our Bagada accused this guy, one of our brothers, and it's not true, right? Um, would I try to reach out? Probably, I would have probably tried to reach out too. I would have handled things definitely differently, but I, at the most, I would have shelved them. And the reason being is that when I seen he wasn't coming in and he no longer trusted us because of what took place, I would have shelved him because that was the right thing to do. Let him go and we save face. It's not like we have him walking away, right? Where that's a no no. So we save face with ourselves, with the other Pagadas, because we now tell them that he's shelved for on. We don't have to give a reason behind it. We shelved him for our reasons, and that's that. As far as what goes on now, I'm out of the life. I mean, how would I treat myself? I wouldn't bother with me, and that I would go about my business and hope that I don't go to prison. That's how I would treat myself.
I like that. So one kind of dovetail, and folks, we have some good news, we have some bad news, right? So I guess, John, the bad news always comes first. This will be our last of the series on New Theory, and John has been more than generous with his time and his talent. But the good news is John and I have something in the works, a little bit more of a committed channel and a committed situation. We're just figuring out the logistics, but it looks like it's something that that's going to be happening. So we appreciate John and everything. So John, one last question before we conclude the 9-part series of the New Theory podcast with John Pennisi. There's guys that are commenting below that they're real guys, and you could tell by the comments, the fake accounts. This isn't like you're getting like, hey, like screw you, you're a bad dude. You're getting like questions or comments that are kind of inside information, and you and I both picked up on that. So I'm going to assume that some of the aforementioned guys earlier on the organizational chart are listening to this, right? And if they're listening this deep on number 9 episode, I don't know, 40 minutes in, they're interested, right? What do you say to those guys that are listening?
I I just say that they should go about their lives, and I would hope that somehow, some way, they could change their lives, because I could tell you that on this side, and I mean not being in the fishbowl anymore, looking outside in, I'm in a much happier place. Life is great. I don't have any stress, and that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah.
But as far as people creating an email or a fake whatever, fake email address or a fake profile to write things that I believe that they would never say in person, I don't get that at all. And if it is anyone from the street or in that life, that's a no-no. That's not the way you conduct yourself. That's not an honorable thing to do. But to each his own, and that's that. And hopefully, people can see things for what it is. A lot of guys don't want to admit, but they know what I say is the truth. That life is not what people think it is, by far.
Interesting. And I talk, John, I talk to you. I talk to you more than I talk to my partner. And I could tell that you're definitely a changed man. And sometimes I hear in your voice that, and saying this respectfully, that it pains you that it had to be this way. And it kind of sucks in life sometimes when things don't have to be a certain way, and like you kind of get pushed for them to be that way, which will lead us into our upcoming new show, which we'll get into briefly. Again, I just want to say thanks, John. You've been a gentleman. You were honest. You were open. You didn't claim to know things you didn't know. You didn't claim to know who killed Kennedy and stuff that was before your time. But
Yeah.
the cool thing about you though is you're pretty juiced in though because of where you live. That you got hooked up with some of the old timers. So, John, on behalf of New Theory, on behalf of myself, and the people that do listen in, I really do appreciate everything you've done for us.
Thank you, Tom. And for all you listeners out there, we will go into the whole story in detail of what actually took place of how and why and everything of what happened, because there's a lot of people that are making comments,
Yep.
and I laugh at them. Not that I'm laughing at anybody, but I laugh at some of the comments because the whole story is not really out there. And there's people who say, well, why didn't you just leave the state? They don't know that I did leave the state. So we'll get to the whole story, and that'll come out, soon.
Exactly. And we're gonna do it right. Right now we're kind of winging it with our Zooms. Nobody made a comment about the hat, so I'm pretty happy about that.
I
John
like that hat.
John liked it. That's all that matters. And just another shout out to Mentor Course Review. Adam over there put a dope website together. A lot of this is about legitimacy. A lot of this is about credibility. We even did a podcast on the mob and social media. So when it comes to social media, it'd be nice to have a source that shows credibility for quote unquote an influencer. But that's what Mentor Course Review does. We'll put a link below. Support Adam because he supports us. And if anybody else is looking to sponsor the new show, drop me a line at Tommy New Theory. And Giovanni, grazie per tutti. All right. We really appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you.